Hi, welcome back, guys, to the DFM podcast. In this podcast, I'm joined by Sarah Glennane. She's a CEO of the Screen Composers Guild here in Ireland and also music supervisor. But Sarah, I'll let you introduce yourself. You can just give whatever explanation you want of yourself, history, how you got into music, and what you're up to now, really.
Okay. Hi, Dean. Thank you very much for having me on the podcast. Where would I start? I guess I studied marketing in college, so this is quite an unlikely place to have ended up with. But I did come out of marketing going, I really don't know what that qualifies me to do. But I've been up in Mountjoy Square studying it, and there's an art college there as well. And I was hanging out with the art students and very interested in, I guess, them because I was learning about making things and selling things and developing customer bases, and then watching them making things but not necessarily have the means to sell them and find customer bases. That kind of led me into, oh, where does the skills that people learn in business fit in with the arts?
Mm-hmm.
And I went into kind of working then in galleries and did a thesis on marketing in the arts and kind of fell into that. And then I grew up in Sandy Cove, Killiney, Sallynoggin area, and there's always a really good music session scene there. So pretty much every night in the pub would go to McDonald's a lot. You'd end up back in someone's flat and people playing music. So I had met the Hogan brothers through that, and then went on, and through my sister, she knew a lot of cool people as well, and I went on to meet the rest of the Keelas. So ups and downs and ins and outs, I ended up working with Keela, the band, for the guts of 10 years. I came on board when their manager had just left and it was a short term kind of filler space, and then they had got a new manager from England and that didn't work out, and I gradually just grew into taking over that role. But they're a very interesting collective of musicians to work with because they also have their own cottage industry, and I think that's what you find with a lot of musicians in Ireland.
Yeah.
Through working with them, I developed this understanding of publishing, and then putting music into film and third-party media. And after working with them for those years and learning those skills, I then left them and did a course at Berklee College in music supervision. And I suppose I just really, I developed a weird two-pronged kind of passion, one being absolute nerdish interest in publishing and copyright, and the other being the creativity behind using music as a storytelling creative element, and how people can do it so brilliantly and people can do it so badly. And I was kind of
Yeah.
fascinated by that. So that then led me on to doing a report for IMRO about music for screen. I worked as a music supervisor on a couple of productions in Ireland, and I really enjoyed that, but I was a little bit frustrated by the lack of knowledge that I felt there was within the filmmaking and TV making community, and was quite interested to find out why that was, and
Yeah.
led me on to doing a report for IMRO, which you can read on their website, which was really just having a look at the whole area, talking to key people in the industry, in both the audiovisual industry and music. So I talked to composers, music supervisors, publishers, producers, people working in the Department of Arts and Culture, in Screen Ireland, in BAI, in IMRO, and that really gave me quite an understanding of the area. And from that, then the Screen Composers Guild came into being. That's quite a long introduction.
No, that's actually not that long because trust me, we've had people on the podcast that's given much longer than that, so don't worry. But we've given a lot of details. It's kind of actually brought up a lot of questions that I haven't even sort of prepared for you. So you start off
Yeah.
and you're saying that you didn't really know what to do after that, where it usually actually be the opposite way. If you probably turned around and said to someone, "Oh, I'm going to study music in college," you're like, "Oh, what you got to do with that? Go and study business or something." which is kind of
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting. But like yourself, actually, that's kind of happened to me this year. You're saying you got that sort of nerdiness towards music publishing. I've actually just today I finished my music business diploma at BIM. It was the last day of lectures today.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Well done.
But when I went there, I actually went from the composing aspect of there's three modules there of recorded music, live industry, and music publishing. And I went there mainly wanted to focus on the music publishing aspect to just learn about copyrights and everything just that a composer I think really should know. But
Yeah.
when since I've been there, I've actually kind of turned into that sort of nerdy aspect of us really actually enjoying music publishing as a whole, and sort of
Yeah.
think and supervision and just everything sort of involved in it really.
Yeah. It's weird to discover you enjoy
Yeah,
what
like
other people find mind-blowingly boring and complicated. But
yeah, and that's kind of the thing with publishing. It's like if one or two people have told me about like it's sort of seen as like the dark arts of music to an extent, which it kind of is. Like it's not really explored publicly as much as the live industry and recorded industry. It's really like you need to know your stuff and you're sort of getting involved in it. But a lot of
yeah,
people that are involved in producing and releasing music actually don't even know what it is in the first place.
yes, yeah, very, very much so. It was probably I wasn't that long working with Gila when I was interested in the different money streams, and then went looking through their publishing, and with very little kind of understanding I started tackling the mechanical side of things and tracking it, and I realized that quite a lot of their catalog was missing, and in without any real knowledge and just kind of enjoying looking through things and exploring and following up,
Mm-hmm.
I managed to get this wad of cash that had been sitting there unclaimed that was theirs, and that I found quite mad. You know, that there's income streams coming in all the time every time music's played, but it's such a big, you know, area for
Yeah.
somebody who's making music at this at the rate that, say, the lads in Keela were maybe. It's there's just there must be a huge amount of money that's never claimed. I find that
Yeah,
quite
like
interesting.
even
Disturbing.
even this year, like I've talked to my publishing lecturer Aaron Casey, who he was
Oh,
heavily
Aaron's great.
yeah
Yeah,
yeah he's very very knowledgeable, and he was obviously heavily involved in IMRO for the 5 years that he was there. But even he was saying he's done one or two audits, and the amount of money he's found in some of the audits were just ridiculous that people didn't realize what
yeah,
was lying around there. Like
yeah. I think any basic audit, like audit sounds like a huge grand kind of forensic accounting
yeah.
procedure. But if you were even just to take your own monthly kind of statements and go through and make sure that whatever the percentages are add up to 100%, and you know, just the kind of simple follow throughs is usually maybe a mistake that you can find along the way, and then if you challenge or, you know, query it, you might be found right, and that helps generate more income. Or just logging live performances, like there is a lot of work involved, but if you
Hmm.
can get into a good habit with it, and like I say, once you start getting interested in it, it's quite fascinating. And also the idea that as a creator you create this piece of art which then belongs to everyone.
Everyone, yeah.
That is the idea, you know, and people who listen to it take it into their own life stories and use it for their own ideas. So I think it's a lovely return to the creator from that kind of that tree. It's like a tree that bears fruit every year. It
Hmm.
keeps harvesting, and I think it's lovely that there is a return in that, and that you know, kind of an acknowledgement for what
Yeah,
abundance that song has delivered,
yeah. I think it's more
even
the acknowledgement.
emotionally. And yeah,
Like you don't
yeah,
want to, as a creator wanting to like fair enough. You most creators create for just the love of creation as a composer, any sort of artist, whether it's a poet, a painter, anything. But at the end of the day, like people need to make a living. They do, and if the best way for them to make a living. You want to make a living on what you love doing, and that's creating musical. Then you want to hope that you're able to collect any money that's out there, like, and you don't want to have people scoundering, trying to worry about what their next paycheck if you can't find this money that they're actually owed in the first place.
Yeah, yeah. Or the idea of I won't remember his name now, the guy who was off in Australia, that I know that he was really big in Australia, and he'd completely lost track of his music. It's a film. I can't remember now what his name is. But his music was off having a career of its own, unbeknownst to him,
Yeah.
because it had been kind of commandeered by somebody else. So yeah, publishing is it's a really important aspect of deciding to be a creator, because and I have this conversation sometimes with my musician husband as well. It's like, it's not that choosing to be a creator means you don't want money or you don't want to earn money. I mean, you do want to look after your kids. You
Exactly.
do want to provide for them. So this is a means of doing that, and just it's important to acknowledge it.
Yeah, because one way I
So
was kind of looking at publish, like, obviously it can be hard for a composer. Obviously, it works differently if you're a songwriter, differently if you're a composer. But
yeah,
sometimes it can be hard for a composer to get signed to a publisher in the first place. Obviously, the publisher has to enjoy their music, and then once you get there, yeah, you can be, if they're a reliable and good publisher, they'll collect what is owed to you. But in this actually finishing up today, I actually submitted an assignment, and I was looking at the change in administration publishing companies that have kind of started to crop up. So, like, well, not suddenly cropped up, but they're starting to grow, like Song Trust and Cobalt, and sort of their
yeah,
approach, which I think, now I did a sort of nearly a full essay on it, but it's interesting. It gives sort of a lot of power, I think, to solo creatives, composers that maybe aren't signed to a publisher yet, because
yeah,
they're actually able to track their royalties for them and sort of keep tabs and everything for them.
yeah, yeah. There are, and there should be different types of relationships that you can do. I think there is a kind of a strong enough body of self-published composers in Ireland. Certainly, many of the members of the guild would be self-published and
Mm-hmm.
are quite competent in managing and administering their own publishing, or they may have like a family member who works in that kind of assistant role. And it's not it's not impossible to do very well in self-publishing. So, any relationship that you form in music, it should firstly be a relationship where the mutual benefits are, it can be seen to both, and that there is a kind of a mutual, whether it's you're at the same size or you're growing
Mm-hmm.
together, or something that benefits both sides, and that there's empathy across both sides, and then obviously that there's trust, which is really important. Um, so it's, there's different ways. Like Cobalt administration might be really good, but similarly working with an independent publisher who is really interested in helping your career, and is really going to go out
Mm-hmm.
and look for work for you as well. Or, like I said, self-publishing and developing a really good relationship with your PRO, and getting to know the Aaron Casey's who work in Irish Sean Donegan, or and knowing how to approach them, because that's their job as well. So there's different ways that would suit different people, I think. Or and also having maybe different ways that deal with different aspects of your catalog as well. I
Yeah.
mean, that's possible. That I think the idea of these exclusive deals and lifetime contracts, they don't really exist anymore, and
No.
they're not fit for purpose for the industry that we're working in at the moment. So, I mean, I like some of the developments that come online, but I'm not mad either on sometimes the size of those organizations, and I get a
Yeah.
little bit
One
kind of
one thing I
nervous.
find it interesting with some of the exclusives as well, which again was actually kind of one other topic that I actually looked at in that essay was to do with production and trailer music more in particular, but production music in general. Obviously, within
Yeah,
songwriters and like the major labels, when you sign an exclusive to them, you're usually stuck with them, and your catalog is stuck with them as a songwriter, or they even might take your previous catalog that wasn't even signed to them either. But in
yeah,
production music and trailer, like I had a trailer composer on this a couple of episodes, Cody Still, and he's very, very successful in trailer music. But we're talking about an exclusive in that field of music is very different. You can actually sign, like you can sign exclusively to multiple publishers, but it's more kind of on a nearly to an extent of a single song assignment type thing, where whatever song you pitch to that album brief is just exclusive to them, but you physically as a writer isn't exclusively just stuck with that one publisher, which I think
yeah,
is a decent approach to an extent.
yeah, and it works because you're working in quite a genre, in terms of what type of trailers that you're
Mm-hmm.
doing. I guess if you're doing a video game trailer, it's going to be different to a film trailer, or then if you're going on to do production music or more longer form music, then it wouldn't suit. So
Mm-hmm.
when you get into more niche areas of the market, it's really useful to have somebody who's got expertise and contacts in that area, and then you can see your single piece of work. I mean, that can happen a lot anyway with composers, is one piece of work can be significantly
Yeah.
more valuable than maybe all the other pieces of work that they've done. And it's important that that's nurtured, and that you have, good contacts looking
Yeah.
after that. And that they, like I say again, it's that idea of a relationship of mutual benefit. It's a coexisting relationship, which I think we'll also see more and more as we move into the era where the platforms become so big. I think publishers and creators will have to work better together in order to maintain the idea of royalties and the idea of back end, because platforms are rushing to kind of remove all that
Mm-hmm.
and to have it all just one off payments. So
And one thing actually I wanted to ask about was actually music supervision. So how
yeah.
and anyone that I've talked about music supervision, they always say, "Oh, I kind of just fell into the role." So is that kind of the same with you as well? Did you sort of just fall into it, and then on a second point to that, what are sort of either the good things you really enjoy about it that's like it's challenging, but you find rewarding about the challenges, that maybe some of the more difficult parts of actually music supervision as well?
Yes, I totally fell into it. I mean, I didn't really. I kind of having having worked on the artist side of pitching tracks, and getting to know the industry, I was quite interested in seeing what it would be like to be on the other side of the fence.
Hmm.
And I felt like there was a need at that time in Ireland. I didn't feel like there was really that many people doing it. And what was happening was that as an artist manager, I was tending to deliver the contracts, kind of explain to them about how it all worked, how licensing worked, and payments. So I thought maybe there would be an interesting role that I could kind of create for myself there. And also, I just had kids, so it's like just nearly a hobby that I hoped would become a career. And then I enjoyed doing the course. I felt like I wanted to do a course and learn, even though I had most of the knowledge in different bits and pieces. It was good to do a tied up
Yeah.
course, and there was quite a lot about the creative side of it, which is something that I really enjoyed. So yeah, so what do I like? I love the rush. Like, it's a real rush. It's um you get a project, it's quite challenging. It's always like the deadline's always crazy.
That's what I hear
They're
all the time
always
about music
putting
supervision.
in. Yeah, like the ideal is that you're put in at the script stage and pre-developed, all this kind of stuff, but you inevitably get a call from a producer going, "You spent all our money, and the director has put in all these big tracks, and we're full." Sorry, we're we're in need of professional assistance. So you come on then, and then it's kind of balancing between the director. And I like that. I like getting, I think I enjoy getting to know people as well. And I like getting to know the musical backgrounds, or kind of reading them as a musical being, and then working with them to try and replace the music for something that's within their budget.
Yeah.
But also suggesting really alternative types, music directions, or, and breaking down I always say everything is replaceable, because really what the music is doing is playing a role within the storytelling. It's quite a specific function
Oh
within
yeah.
a scene or within a story. So once you can really break that down, then there are usually, a good few different answers that can deliver the same response, if you know what I mean. But they're so but yeah, it's a kind of a rush. And then I like the negotiating. I love the research. That really fascinates me, trying to find out who owns it, and particularly
Yeah. That's the nerdy
smaller or
publishing side of
older
things,
tracks.
that is.
That's the nerdy publishing side of things, and get in contact with these publishers, and then trying to get it across the line and on time. And yeah, and then I think the worst part, I'm not, I guess, you kind of can wake up in the middle of the night going, oh my God, is that credit right? Or is the duration right? Or, I kind of promised that track and they still haven't got back to me. And, there is this whole like panicky side. But yeah, I kind of enjoyed all. I'm really looking forward to doing it again. I've kind of given all my time to the Guild for the last few years. So, and I want to continue doing that. But I'd
A bit
love
of a
if
balance.
yeah, I'd love a good project again. I love that. And it's a great way to listen to music, and to really research and go through different things. Because I don't, a lot of, you go to different workshops, and I don't carry this huge big store of music within me. So I
Yeah.
research project to project. That's the,
Yeah, and actually, I
the
just realized there
kind of,
before we start going into that, in case anyone that's not sort of music related listening to this, or maybe there's someone that's only getting started in music, do you actually want to give a brief explanation of maybe what a music supervisor is and what they kind of do, actually, just in case someone doesn't?
okay, yeah. So a music supervisor is somebody who works with somebody who is looking to use music in some way. So in the audiovisual setting, you maybe work with film or TV, and you could be across the full music requirements of a production, which might be identifying what the music needs of the production are. Is it original music, in which case you might look to source and hire a composer on behalf of the production. And then does the composer need to work with live musicians? So you could be working with the composer, hiring an orchestra, filling that side of things. And then the other side is where you need additional music, which would be place tracks. So that ranges from maybe library music through to very well known chart hits. And then you go and look for the right to use the music within the production. So that entails, going and negotiating, and you hear these huge fees, like a Rolling Stone track's going to cost you 100 grand to have half a minute of it playing in a bar scene in a film. But it's so important, and there's so much to it. So also there can be things like, in a scene, someone's watching TV and the theme music to the program is playing. That needs to be cleared. You cannot use any music. You can't have somebody singing a song on the street. You can't have something playing in the radio or on the TV or coming over the neighbor's wall without having the rights, because music is something that has intellectual property and copyright. So therefore you must acquire the right to include that piece of intellectual property within your production. Or you could be hired as a music supervisor by like a shop, to you're creating a kind of an experience for the customer when they walk into your shop. And that might include having playlists that say this shop is really young and trendy and funky, or like I always loved what Urban Outfitters did. They always had really good music. I think they put a lot into that really added to the brand and the feeling that you got going in there.
Yeah, so like
So
it's a very like it's a role that I look at it. You're nearly like it's hard to say. You're nearly like a composer of being a composer to an extent. Like it's really creative. Like you nearly have just as much creativity as like I've when I was kind of doing this course here, I've looked at it and thinking I actually wouldn't mind doing music supervision or composing. I find both of them very creative. Like it's just with the music
yeah,
supervision side, you actually are getting a bit of the nerdiness along with it because there's a lot of the business side behind that you need to understand how to clear and actually negotiate and get the music done. But it
yeah,
then again
yeah,
it's just super creative, like because you're still having massive inputs on what music is going where and what you think fits this scene and so on.
yeah. And that's it. And the director or the producer is going to come to you and they're either going to have like 500 quid for the scene or 30,000 for the scene. And you have to work within that creates the kind of world in which you can look for the music to work. So,
Hmm.
obviously there's a big difference, but like my friend Juliet, um, who's at Silver Stream Music, she just did the music supervision for normal people, and
Hmm.
that's a great project to get in on because she had got the opportunity there to place Irish artists in amongst really big artists. They had lovely budget, great storyline, great narrative, placed in contemporary Ireland and going across rural to urban and love to sadness. And, so that's the kind of scope that you want to work on and
Yeah.
really then get creative and not be afraid to pitch completely unheard of
Hmm.
artists next to, the big league. So
Exactly. Yeah. And like, if
yeah.
would you have any advice for any composer or songwriters in within sort of if they're looking to get into sync, how they'd maybe go about contacting music supervisors, or do you find in your experience that music supervisors just have their tendency to where they know where they're going to look and they don't really get a lot of
Yeah,
music
I
pitched?
mean, my thing is, you certainly can. There's a lot more sync houses opening up now as well. So I think if you're looking at, if you want to get your music used in something like Love Island or the big thing at the moment,
Hmm.
there is a certain sound, and if you go to a sync house or somewhere like that, they will be good at being the bridge for you to get your music in front of the music supervisor. Um, Otherwise, I like to find music. That's a big part of what I do. I like to come to projects quite fresh and then find the music. So if you're findable, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
So whether you're whatever platform you're out there, and also if it's good music, it's good music. But it just like the scene really dictates what it is. So whether it's like kind of quirky or whether it's poppy or whether you're looking for heavy metal or whatever, but just being out there, I could certainly use Bandcamp and Spotify and SoundCloud and
Hmm.
um other people's brains, YouTube, and
I
you
also
know,
I also find in this
yeah,
sort of case where this when people are trying to get their music synced, that's the point where if they aren't a published songwriter or composer, this is the point where they kind of need to understand what they need to have in place because, as you said, it's really tight deadlines, and if you don't have a song registered or if it's a multiple if it's a co-write and you don't have splits sorted or anything like that, it can make it more tedious for the supervisor and they might actually just sort of push it to the wayside because they actually have such a tight deadline and need to move to a different song like.
yeah, absolutely. And again, your PRO can really help you with that, and in fact can act as your agent. I know I've licensed music going through IMRO where they have that
Okay.
additional kind of role. I would certainly say like registering your music should be one of the first things that you do once you have something completed, recorded, mixed, mastered, or even to the point where maybe you don't have that, but you're out performing it. Registration's so easy to do, so there's no real point to leave it being to the last moment. And whatever way you decide to split it, it is really important, I think, when you're doing that, if you're working with other composers, that um, you register it with a view to. I always think that the your catalogue in a way belongs to your children, because that's the length of time that it's going to exist in your
Mm-hmm.
ownership. It's like 90 years after your
Yeah,
death.
90 years after death, yeah.
So whatever way you do it, there should be some kind of a working relationship in an acknowledgement of that there is. Because if as a music supervisor, if you come to a track that has maybe 3 writers, and maybe one of them is, they were in a band, they all fell out, and one of them no longer wants to deal with the other 2, and you can end up not being able to license it because of that,
Mm-hmm.
or like it just takes too long. So I do think sometimes there should be that should be something that should be nearly available, is the idea of some kind of an agreement that we'll all work together, we all agree to work for the betterment of this song,
Mm-hmm.
because that's in the interest of our children, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can. I mean, I think the hardest thing probably is knowing how to price it. If somebody rings you up and goes, "I really need to do it," like music supervisor, you have a budget, so you'll come with the budget. You know, you can always ask for a little bit more and see where they'll go with that. But generally, it's if you're not well known, it's not going to be a huge amount of money.
Yeah, you just
But
got to get what you're given to them.
yeah,
Not get what you're given, but obviously there is a bit of negotiation, but you have to realize sort of where you stand
there's
to
a
an
bit of,
extent.
yeah. So I mean, what you should do is, if you were like, if I was getting a quote, so if I ring up Sony or whoever looking for a track, they'll send me back a kind of a quote sheet, and that will ask what the name of the production is, who the director is, what talent is involved, is there any named actors, what distribution future is, what's kind of in place distribution wise. So it's signed to Hulu, or she are taking it, or maybe you don't know, it's just going to festivals, and then we'll see what the overall budget is and what the music budget is, and then maybe what other tracks are getting. So how's that music budget being kind of divvied out? Some people look for most favored nation deal, which
Yeah.
looks to have all of the tracks paid at the same amount, but that kind of generally doesn't work out, because you pay more for a bigger track,
Mm-hmm.
which is going to add more value than you do. But you want to kind of make sure that if somebody else who is being licensed, who's around the same level of recognition, or that you're getting on par with them. So ask for all that information. I don't think, and it will make you look more professional as well, but that's important. So, and then you can kind of feel that you're at least getting a fair share of what everyone else is getting.
No, that's good to know. 2 more questions, and before I
Yeah.
sort of let you go. One actually sort of based, one about Ireland and one on the actual guild itself. So the one sort of here, based in Ireland. Well, not even just in Ireland, in just a small sort of small country in general. That's not like a big sort of hub like London or Germany or LA, anything like that. Something a bit smaller. What advice would you give to composers sort of approaching, because you're heavily involved in not just in the entertainment industry in general, you've involved yourself over here. So what sort of advice would you give a composer trying to get involved in a sort of smaller industry? Because some people might look and think, oh, well, if it's so much smaller, well, it's much easier to get in because there's not as much competition. But I actually think it's nearly the opposite. As a composer, I've done a few little free gigs here and there, short films and stuff, but because it's actually smaller, directors over here, I feel, will tend to stick to composers they already have or connections they already have, because it's actually a much smaller market in the first place. So kind of what advice do
Yeah.
you think you would give to people in smaller markets, Ireland or anywhere else, to sort of get going to an extent?
I think, well, my advice, first of all, is that to recognize this isn't a career that you immediately go into. So it's kind of like studying medicine. You got to give yourself a like 7, 8, 9, 10 year kind of progression. And like, I think a lot of composers have come from it in different ways. So it's hard to put an exact career path on it. You know, there's an enormous amount of luck involved. And then there's enormous amount of, I suppose, just kind of serendipity as well, which is kind of the same as luck. But um, like working with younger directors coming up doing shorts, I think that's really valuable. But I think what you must do then is realize this is what you want to do as your career. So you kind of have to professionalize it up. So even if it's a free gig, that you're doing a good contract and that you understand your rights, and then maybe that it's not just free but it's expenses, so that you know there's some level of value exchange, and then research, you know, like researching your industry, learning as much as you possibly can, looking to see, you know, can you work in a post house for a while, and maybe that way you'll find out about what happens to music when it goes to the sound mixers. And yeah, I think immersing yourself in the industry in any
Mm-hmm.
which way you can, and really, you know, learning as much as you possibly can about it, and then like going with the flow and following your instincts, but also where you're being brought, because it's also an area that at the outset you just go, I'm going to be a composer. I
Yeah.
think it's kind of like that going to film school. People go to film college because they want to be a director,
Mm-hmm.
but like 20% of them come out and be directors, and then there's people who come out and they're producers, or they go into editing, or they go into
Yeah.
post production supervision. So similarly with working with music and audiovisual, you can go into mixing, you could go into, you know, setting up a performance orchestra, or um you know, doing that kind of end of it, or also going into music supervision, or also going into sound design. Or so I suppose being open to opportunity is a huge part of it,
Mm-hmm.
and being open to learning and not expecting anything to happen really overnight, and then you'll see where you end up. I don't know how much, like a small market, I think it's probably as hard anywhere, you know, if you
Yeah.
decided to go over and pitch up in LA, and even if you were like getting the opportunity of being a Hans Zimmer stable hand, then you know, you're still at the bottom of a rung where there's an awful lot of people up
Yeah.
ahead of you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of endurance involved, and people don't know, and like there's nothing wrong with that either. There's nothing wrong with doing it for a couple of years and going, actually, you know what, I'm not into this type of lifestyle. I'm not into working for 2 months and getting two projects back to back, and then having nothing for 6 months, and having to, you know, do whatever else to try and get by. Or I'm not into being shouted at by directors, or being stressed out, or,
Yeah,
you know,
I think a
so
lot of people get
so
caught up sort of looking at the high end sort of like they get caught up looking at the
yeah.
Hans Zimmers, the Danny Elfmans, anything up there, and they're thinking, oh, well, once I get to a certain level, I'm gonna have a project each month, or I'm gonna have 4 to 5 films a year, or whatever it is. It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. And like with anything, any area like this that you're looking at going into, you need to have like 3 or 4 other jobs that
Mm-hmm.
you were kind of simultaneously doing, or forms of income, you know, kind of like living down in Dingle or somewhere. They all have 3 or 4 jobs
Yeah.
because, you know, the crazy tourist season job doesn't last all year. So you have to have backups and plans, and that can be some of the real joy of working. I really like that, actually. I like that you can be completely immersed in a project and it's all you think about. And then you get 2 months off where you're not, and maybe you're
You're doing
doing
something
something
else.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So um, yeah, I think you have to trust in yourself. I do think sometimes that composers come and say, "I'll make this music," and my friends tell me it sounds really like film music, and you know, who should I send it to? But like, if that's like you gotta, I expect more from people looking to work in an area. You
Yeah.
know, expect them to know more about it than to be kind of at that asking that question. It's, you know, like, go, it's all available to be learned about there. You can
Yeah.
go online, look at all the composers, even like Google composers, see how many composers have websites online. That could put you off immediately. You go, wow, it's, you know, there's millions of these people. So or yeah, I kind of believe, I believe that most composers have ended up in it because of serendipity, because that's kind of what the career path is.
Hmm.
It's like a, you jump on a boat, and if it brings you that way, it brings you that way, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. And
I think on that
you
point that
know,
you made there as well, if you are approaching someone and when as you're talking, obviously you don't have to go and sell yourself as like a salesperson, but if you just go and just have a general chat, will show that you actually have general knowledge or you've done research on the area that you're talking about, it gets them
yeah,
more, it gives you become sort of more respected in their eyes, and you have more time to speak to in the first place because you've realized you've done that research and you sort of know what you're talking about, actually showing interest that you're trying to get to where you're going. Like,
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, because like I say, even doing work for free, you can make that more professional by doing a contract, by understanding the nuts and bolts of the industry. And I think that's what you should be doing if that's really what you want to do. Nobody's going to come and pick you up in a taxi and bring you to it. You have to make your own way there. And a
mm-hmm.
lot of that is learning the industry, researching it, seeing what other people did, and coming up with your own variation of it that suits you in your life, and
Yeah,
and you know, trusting, a lot of trust.
yeah,
So
definitely.
um but yeah, the guild, like when I had embarked on the research for IMRO, there wasn't really there was, I hadn't even thought of a guild or anything like that.
That was
It's
actually one
really,
thing I was going to quickly ask you. Is there, to your
yeah,
knowledge, other, like, to any composer or anything like that, listen from different countries outside of Ireland, is there guilds in different cities and countries? I haven't really.
yeah,
There is, yeah.
yes,
Okay.
oh yeah, there is. So that's what I found out in my research. Yes, so there's a Screen Composers Guild in Canada, in Australia, in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
England has the Ivor Novellas, which has a screen composer kind of committee. And then there's also another kind of guild type organization that's really about advertising composers. America has different kind of, they're slightly different because their unions are stronger.
Yeah.
So, but and recently there's a new organization called Your Music, Your Future, which has been set up really to collect composers together against the idea of the platforms moving in and looking for these direct licenses that would
Oh, okay.
completely buy you out of all back ends. That's
Mm-hmm.
really interesting. Look them up and actually see if one of them would do a podcast, because I'm so happy to see it coming up, and it's quite established composers who are leading that. And a big part of the idea of the guild really is about the established composer returning information and experience to their kind of craft. I always
Mm-hmm.
think the guild is the kind of center of the guild, or the heart of the guild is the craft
Yeah.
that it's built around, you know, and it's about looking to establish the best craft people, or the best way of doing whatever you're doing. So the guild, that's very much at the heart of it, is the idea that we really want to make amazing music and the best quality, and help each other as a community to get there, to get to that point of
Yeah.
making really, really beautiful music
That's what I
that
found. I just
that
find the
lasts.
education even about it has just been great. Like I'm only I'm only associate member so far of the Irish one because I don't have full professional
Yeah,
credits yet. But even from that perspective, just with some of the speakers we've had lately speaking to us and different, it's just even getting to just hear different people talk. You'll pick up different bits of information from anything you will. Like there's just so much education involved in it.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think people are very open to sharing, particularly when they get to a certain stage in their career and they acknowledge that they only got there from people before them helping
Hmm.
them, But particularly in music, I think there's always, in any music that I've seen, there's always been this natural kind of collaborative space, that there's a kind of a joy in sharing, there's a joy in playing together, there's that kind of communication exists already,
Hmm.
particularly within performance music, and it didn't exist in this area because there wasn't a means for it to exist. There wasn't any place for composers to get together. And that was the first thing in the first meeting that we had. There was about 13 composers that um I called to, and we just went and met in a hotel, and talked about the idea. They were so happy to actually meet each other, because traditionally composers had only met each other at the IFTA Awards, whatever, four
Yeah.
were nominated, and there was a lot of the same four getting nominated.
Hmm.
So they were really happy to meet each other, get that opportunity, and yeah, there's been a lot of goodwill, and it's also kind of mirroring what other elements in the audiovisual industry are doing. So the Screen Directors Guild, obviously Screen Producers Ireland is a guild organisation which is quite powerful and established. It's great.
Hmm.
And then also lots of other craft areas have their own smaller guilds. So that in a industry where people work randomly and in different ways, and that people who share this common kind of craft can talk to each other and share their information, and bitch about everyone else and whatever.
Yeah.
But the idea was to kind of mirror that and to include, to try and get this point of access for music to be part of the audiovisual conversation. And for these particular musician composers who have really dedicated their um, music skills to creating music for audiovisual, that they would have a place at the wider table for the conversation, because the composers working to make music for film and TV aren't really necessarily doing anything else, and they have put a lot of investment into
Yeah.
doing that. So they should be at the table. And I also think that the productions gain an awful lot from the quality of music and from composers' input. So it was kind of
100%.
mad that they weren't. Yeah. So it's a means to identify Irish productions. I think music is part of the key to making Irish productions stand out and be
Hmm.
unique in what can be very hard market in the English speaking kind of audiovisual content market.
Yeah,
So
totally.
yeah, but it's been a really enjoyable journey setting up the guild, and um, I hope it will continue.
Great. Well, sir, that was honestly that wraps up most of the questions I have for you. Unless you have anything to add, is there anything sort of coming up that you think you need to announce if anyone wants to check anything out? I know you said you have no projects, radio music, supervision wise, but is there any
Yeah,
if there's any actually if there's any Irish composers that's not linked, the guild will be linked in the bottom of this video. And anyways, if anyone wants to find more information about them and looking to join them, so that'll be linked at the end of this video.
yeah, go onto our website and have a look. We're all like reeling in this COVID
Hmm.
situation, and nobody really has a clue how it's going to go on. So composers, some composers are working away. Composers are kind of pretty well placed for this because they've tended to work in isolation and remotely anyway. So from that side, they are well able to work and continue working, but they need content to make music for, and
Exactly, yeah.
if production doesn't keep happening, that it's going to be really, really difficult time. So I would certainly, if there's anyone from the industry looking for music, please go check out the website and look at the composers who are our members, and also composers who aren't members of our guild. We don't have all the composers working in the market here, and I would certainly not like them to be, overlooked either. There's
Exactly, yeah.
amazing talent in Ireland, so go find it. But yeah, I think that's pretty much
Great.
everything.
Well, sir, thanks again for coming on. I'm sure this was very informative for a lot of people, because I know I learned a good bit from it. So I hope whoever else listens has. And I just want to thank you again for coming on.
Thank you, Dean. It's been really enjoyable.
Thank you.
And yeah,
Thank
get in touch. Go on the website and you'll find my email there. Thanks
Great.
a million.
No problem. Well, there you
Bye.
go, guys. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and I'll see you on the next one.